Hello everyone, welcome to the BAS training video focusing on requisition and purchase order creation within the Fieldpoint work order management software. In this video, you will learn how to create purchase orders for non-stock parts that will be used on a specific work order. Before we start, let's spend a few minutes talking about what the main purpose and function of a purchase order is. Here at BAS, we have 14 branches that span across 9 states, with each individual branch making multiple purchases per day. All these purchases must be tracked for multiple reasons. These reasons include making sure that each purchase gets charged to the appropriate branch so that our end of the month P&Ls show the correct amount that the branch spent on materials. We also need to track every purchase to make sure that we don't pay for parts that were ordered but never delivered. And finally, we need to track all purchases to prevent any dishonest employees from buying any items on the company accounts and using them for their own personal gain. Although we hope this never happens and like to think BAS team members have the highest of integrity, BAS must still protect against theft. With that being said, let's demonstrate the proper procedure for creating POs for parts within the Fieldpoint system. There are going to be 2 separate scenarios in which you guys will be using the parts to create the purchase orders for you. First scenario being purchasing parts for a quoted job that is now in quote approved status, and the second scenario being purchasing parts for a work order that the repairs will fall under the NTE, but the tech did not have the correct parts on his truck to complete the job while on site. So in our first scenario, creating parts for a quote approved job, we are currently in our viewing all work orders in the Fieldpoint system. So we're going to kind of scroll over here and go to our status and then search for the status quote approved. Hit enter. We're viewing 3 different work orders for branch 10 that are currently in quote approved status. So we'll select the top one to go ahead and order our parts. Being that this is a quote approved job, a quote was obviously written for this, and if the quote was done right and found the proper quoting process, I'm going to go ahead and open up the quote, and it should tell me what parts need to be ordered and where I need to order those parts from. So if I click the quotes tab and then followed by opening the actual quote, looks like this is for a replacement of compressor, control board, and condenser fan motor. Here's all my parts information for what I need to order. Condenser motor, fan blade, and compressor will be coming from Baker in Tampa, and the control board will be coming from the OEM manufacturer Carrier, also in Tampa. So now I know where I need to order these parts from and the part numbers and costs. So I can now create my POs and then call and order the parts. So I'm going to go ahead and close the quote, and I'm going to open up my part screen, which should have all the parts that were on the quote ported over into the parts section. So here's all my parts that were on the quote. They're now in the parts section. So I want to order the compressor, the condenser motor, and the condenser fan blade from Baker Distributing. So to order all 3 of those parts, have them on the same PO, I'm going to select each individual part and choose Baker as the vendor. Also, to get these 3 items to all go on the same quote, we want to make sure that they all have the same date and the same resource, and then the same vendor, which has not been selected yet. So before we click into the parts, we're going to see the motor and the blade, same date, same resource, as well as the compressor, same date and same resource, because these were all ported over when the quote was approved. So now I can go ahead and select the 3 parts, starting with the condenser fan blade. It's going to split my screen and show me the work order item. I'm going to head over this way and click Edit on the work order item. And if I scroll down, there's a place here called Requisition Vendor. This is where we're going to select the vendor of where we're going to be purchasing these parts. If I hit the magnifying glass, it will show me all the vendors. And I'm going to type Baker. And I spelled it wrong, so give me 1 second. Baker. Okay, so Baker Distributing comes up as the vendor. I select Baker. And then I will save the part. It's going to take for a minute. Okay, now that the part is saved, I have the part, the vendor, the tech, and the date. I'm going to commit this part to the job. By doing so, the system knows that this is not a part that's stocked on the truck and that I'm going to be buying it from Baker, so it automatically creates a requisition for me. So if I choose the hyperlink here and click on the word requisition, it takes me into the newly created requisition, which will show me my PO number. So this is my PO number. It's created in the system. This PO number now has the condenser fan motor attached to it, or the fan blade. I think I started with the fan blade, but either way, this fan blade is now attached to this purchase order. Now I also need to get the condenser fan motor and the compressor also on this PO. So I'm going to close the stock requisition, close the work order item fan blade, and I'm going to go ahead and choose the motor. Now the date and the resource are already the same, so I do not have to change those. All I have to do is click Edit and make the vendor Baker and commit it to the job. And this part will be added to that requisition and PO number. So I added the Baker as the requisition vendor. I'm going to save the part. And select Commit Part. I can now close the condenser fan motor work order item and move on to my compressor. And I hit the X too many times. Let me go back into parts. So if I scroll over a little bit here, in our system, because I'm in the test database, it would actually show the requisition number right here for these 2 parts. It would also show what vendor it was. But I'm in the test database, so you're not going to see that right now. But I've added the fan blade and the condenser motor, added a vendor. The system created a requisition when I committed those to the job. So the only one I have left to do for Baker is the compressor. So I'll select it. It will open up the item. I will then edit it. Scroll down to requisition vendor. Select Baker. Save the part. And then commit the part. So all 3 of these items are now added to one single requisition, because resource 804, which is me, is purchasing these parts on the 17th of August from Baker. So since all three parts are coming from Baker, purchased by the same person on the same date, if all three of those items match, it will, when you commit the parts, they will add them all to the same requisition, which has one single PO number. So since this is now committed, it put it on the requisition that was created when I first committed the fan blade to the job. So if I actually click on this requisition, it will bring me into the requisition. It will show me the PO number, and if I select the tab lines, it will show that there are in fact 3 items on this PO: my condenser fan blade, motor, and compressor. So it's important to create your POs in this way so that these line items get added to the requisition. If we were to just go into requisitions on the work order and make a blank requisition, when the tech gets the receipt sent by the tech, or maybe the parts were shipped to the tech's house, and let's say the manager ordered all 3 of these parts and they're having them shipped to a remote tech's house. So maybe the condenser fan motor shows up first and it has, a receipt just for the motor. He sends that to the branch admin, who then has to receive this PO. Well, the branch admin's going to receive it, if the PO is blank with no lines, as only needing 1 condenser fan motor. Once he receives it, it can't be reopened. So then the condenser fan blade and the compressor show up later with the same PO number on it, but the admin already received it because he did not know that these 2 items were also on this PO because the requisition was blank. So if we use the parts to create the requisition in the PO number, then when the admin, if he gets sent just a receipt for just the fan blade, he knows not to receive this in the system until he gets the motor and the compressor. In the first case scenario, if the requisition was blank, if we just hit the plus and created a requisition with no lines, the admin would get the receipt for the condenser fan blade, receive it right away, and that requisition can now no longer be opened. So when the fan motor and the compressor come in later, he has to create a whole nother separate requisition and a separate requisition for the compressor as well. So if we do it this way, it saves a lot of work on everybody's end. So now that we have these 3 items ordered, all from Baker, all in the same PO, we can go ahead and call and give them our PO number 100685-081718. On this work order, we also have to order a circuit board from Carrier. So I'm going to go ahead and close these work order items out and get back to just the work order level. So here I am within my parts screen still. So we have the fan blade, fan motor, compressor all coming from Baker. So now we need to make a separate PO for the control board. So I will click the control board, click edit, scroll down, select the vendor. In this particular case, it's Carrier. We always want to be making sure that we're selecting the correct vendor. So Carrier, we have multiple accounts with Carrier. So Carrier Tampa is part of CE Florida. So I'm going to be selecting Carrier Florida. If it was Georgia or South Carolina Carrier, we would be ordering from Carrier Southeast, so I'd select that. But in this case, it's Tampa. We're going to select Carrier Florida. We're going to go ahead and save it. And then commit it. Once I have the part committed, the system has already made a requisition and PO number with the control board attached to it as a line item. To find out my PO number, I'll go and click the requisition link. It will take me into the requisition created for this part and show me my PO number. So my PO number is now 100-685-081718-1. So I can go ahead now. So as my purchase order numbers are being created, I'm writing them down. So now we have all of our POs created. I'm going to go ahead and call carrier, call Baker, order these parts, and once I'm finished, I will update the work order notes with whether they're in stock or their ETA for arrival and what day I plan on scheduling the job. So as for now, we would mark this as parts ordered, and we would select a follow-up date and everything like that. But this one's essentially done. We've created our purchase orders, we've ordered our parts. The only thing I didn't do, because I'm trying to make this video short, is I didn't go in, add a work order note saying that I ordered the parts and when they would be in, and then I did not go in and adjust the arrive on date for when the parts are scheduled to arrive. So that's ordering parts for a quote approved job. It's very easy just because the quote items automatically feed into the parts when the quote is approved. And then once those parts are in there, all we have to do is select each individual part and where we're buying it from, commit it to the job. The system makes the POs for us. So the only other scenario is when our tech is on site, he can complete the repairs under the NTE, but he does not have those parts on his truck and they're not at any supply house nearby. They must either A, come from the manufacturer or be ordered in. So in that case, those work orders would be in the status as the checked out of waiting parts. So if I select waiting part status and filter the calls that way, here's my calls that are waiting for parts to be ordered. That can be done under the NTE. So in this particular scenario, this job hasn't been coded and parts haven't been fed into the part screen. So the first thing we're going to do is go and look and see what the tech needs. He says he arrived on site, found RT3 with a defective blower motor due to shorted windings, called Lennox, got part number and pricing for the items listed below. So he needs a blower motor and a motor mounting plate and 2 hours. So I would then go and check the NTE, make sure he can do these things under the NTE, and then we would go ahead and order these parts. So as I said, we're in the test database. I'm sure this would probably exceed the NTE on this call, but let's pretend it's a $2,000 NTE, and I can, go ahead and order these and have the tech install them without doing a quote. So, since there was no quote, if I go into the part screen, it should be blank, which it is, and I'm going to just go ahead and add those two parts right now, which saves also time on the invoicing side. And when I add the parts, I'll also add the vendor and commit them to the job, and the system will create a PO just like it did in the previous way that we just created some POs. So the only difference here is that the parts aren't already there. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and hit the plus sign. And I'm going to create the part. So the tech that checked out, his resource number and truck number are already pre-populated in here along with today's date. So the only thing I have to do is select an item class. And since these are non-stock parts, we would be selecting NS parts as the class. We will now select an item out of the NS parts class, and we're looking for a blower motor. So if I type in search in the descriptions for motor, I want to buy a factory OEM evaporator fan motor, which is our blower motor. I would put in the cost, which I can go ahead and get from our tech notes over on this side of the screen. So if I go to our tech notes, the cost is $357.89. I'll put that in for our cost. And I can actually substitute the description of the part with what the tech provided me, which is a blower motor and the Lennox part number. I can now paste that in here, and all I need to do now is select the vendor, which is Lennox. Select Lennox. I'm going to now save this part. And commit it to the job. So since I have a date, a resource, and a vendor, and it's a non-stock part, the system knew that I'm buying something from Lennox to create a requisition and a PO attached to that requisition. So if I click on the requisition hyperlink, this is my PO number. So the only thing left now to do is add this motor mounting plate to this requisition and PO. So I'm going to close the requisition, close the work order item. I backed out too far there, so now I'm here. Here's my blower motor. Here's my requisition number. I need to add the motor mounting plate. So I will create a new part by hitting the plus sign in parts. I will select the item class of NS parts because we're buying non-stock parts. So since there is no preloaded description for a motor mounting plate, we have to use the part called freeform text. So if I type in the word free, filter, so now this is just a non-stock part that we can name whatever we want. I can go get my part description from the text notes, motor mounting plate. I'm going to copy it and highlight this and then paste. I'm going to update the unit cost to its correct cost, $89.75, and then I'm going to pick the vendor Lennox by hitting the magnifying glass and searching in the description for Lennox. After I select Lennox, I will then save the part. And commit the part. And because the date was the same as the previously created motor, as long as the date is the same as that, the resource and the vendor are the same, it puts this mounting plate on the same requisition and PO as the motor that I just created. So this part is now created. We can click on the requisition. Here is our PO number. Now within this requisition, if I click lines, both items on the same PO. Here's the blower motor, here's the mounting plate. So now when the tech picks this up and sends the receipt to his admin, the admin is now going to know that there is a blower motor and a blower motor mounting plate that should be on the receipt. As always, if you guys have any questions, you can reach out to Nick Fox and he will guide you through this process if there's anything that you do not understand based on this video. Thank you.